It's a topic that is certainly raising eyebrows across the United States, the issue of gun control. Well, now YouTube has removed videos providing instructions on how to modify weapons of various kinds, but many users have to flag such offending videos. So if people don't report the video will end up staying. All of this, of course, coming after one of the worst mass shootings in U.S. history last week, when a gunman opened fire and killed 58 innocent people in Las Vegas.
In the wake of the tragic shooting in Las Vegas last week, YouTube has decided to remove videos that give tutorials on gun modification. The company in a statement said, quote, "We have long had a policy against harmful and dangerous content. In the wake of the recent tragedy in Las Vegas, we've taken a closer look at videos that demonstrate how to convert firearms to make them fire more quickly, and we've expanded our existing policy to prohibit these videos." End quote. It was found that the Las Vegas gunman Paddock had modified his gun to an automatic rifle with the help of a bump stock, which is basically a device that increases the number of bullets a rifle can fire. Gun modifications are legal in the US, and although YouTube has pulled down these instructional videos, a random search on YouTube threw up many other explainer videos. It is important to note that YouTube removes offending content only after they are flagged, and it relies heavily on users to flag offending videos in the first place. The larger question is whether such videos have any place on YouTube, or for that matter, anywhere on the internet. Bureau Report, WION.
All right, to get perspective on this story, let's now go straight to our guest. Joining in for the discussion, we have Golan, an international affairs expert, joining us now from San Francisco in California. Stephen, great to have you on the program again. Let's talk about this issue. Gun control sort of showing its ugly head once again after the Las Vegas shootings. This time, YouTube now saying it will dismantle any type of videos. Is that going to prove effective?
No. As your lead-in indicated, there are still many ways available via YouTube to find out how to modify semi-automatic weapons to be automatic weapons. I just Googled it myself, and in 30 seconds found a fellow who, in the space of a 4-minute video, was able to instruct his audience to pretty easily convert 2 different types of guns to be automatic weapon firing weapons. So it really doesn't seem, it's a small step in the right direction, but I want to emphasize just a very small step.
You talked about a small step in the right direction. Where does that right direction really need to be focused on? Is it the general public? Is it stricter gun laws? Or is it the politicians that really need to be held accountable?
Great question. Really all three, but I'd say the fundamental direction needs to go beyond the question of semi-automatic or automatic weapons to really just banning assault weapons totally. That is, weapons that are military-style weapons that could still fire fairly rapidly, although not as rapidly as automatic weapons can. There's really no need for such weapons in our society. They're not to be used in hunting. You wouldn't use a semi-automatic weapon if you're a real legitimate hunter to hunt deer or whatever else, other wild animals in our society. They're not really legitimate for home defense. You could use smaller weapons for that purpose, for the very occasional, very rare, and hopefully event that no one would ever encounter. So the fundamental problem, or one fundamental problem our society faces with gun control or gun safety, is the very presence of semi-automatic weapons to begin with. They've been used in many, many other incidents, even without being modified to be super rapid firing automatic weaponry. We've had dozens of people killed in many incidents in our society in recent years as a result of even unmodified semi-automatic weapons, military type of weapons. That's one important place to start. Whether we're even going to do that, that discussion doesn't even seem to be in the air right now, unfortunately.
Right. Unfortunately, coming again at a time when yet another mass shooting, that seriously seems to be the time when these discussions are sort of brought back into the limelight. When it comes to the attacker, the suspect, Paddock, he apparently had an arsenal of weapons. So many guns in his hotel room, apparently explosives in his car, and even in his home in Mesquite. I mean, how is it possible that one person has this this amount, such a large amount of weapons. I mean, that is really hard to believe.
It's hard to believe, except it's true. It's the reality. And he's by no means isolated in our society. There should be, among many other safety measures, some kind of flag or warning if someone were to accumulate so many weapons. He had, I believe, 47 or something like that in total in his home or in the hotel room where he fired from. So that in and of itself is a problem. There's no way of flagging it, but you've got this ingrained resistance on the part of really a relatively small number of people who feel that they have a right to have as many weapons as they would want. They collect this the way some people may collect little souvenirs when they visit, a tourist attraction. They accumulate dozens and dozens because they feel it's their right and because simply they enjoy it. It's their hobby. Unfortunately, this hobby can convert into the reality of people like Stephen Paddock, crazy or whatever their motivations, being able to accumulate dozens of very, very deadly weapons that occasionally but really regularly are used for assault on the larger society.
Let me also ask you this, Stephen. Interestingly, we don't know if the suspect, Stephen Paddock, used YouTube or perhaps Google or a combination of both them, or how he was able to fire at those concert goers and killing innocent lives, 58 innocent lives. But do you think that perhaps if this ban had taken place earlier, that this could have been prevented? I mean, what, if anything, could have led to the prevention of one of the worst mass shootings in U.S. history, if anything at all?
I think it gets partly back to my previous answer. If we were able to ban and buy back or remove military assault weapons, again, they're not automatic weapons, they're semi-automatic, but even military assault weapons to begin with from our society, that would have prevented Stephen Paddock from having these to begin with, or at least would have decreased the chances of him having it. Another step would be, as I mentioned, to alert the authorities if someone is accumulating a lot of these weapons. The more general problem in our society is that we do have a gun culture in certain parts of our society. It's true that only 3% of the population has, I think, about half the guns in the country. So I don't want to portray it to your audience that everyone in the United States is walking around with a gun on their hip. But still, we have this gun culture to begin with, in which it's a hobby, it's viewed as a fundamental right, it's viewed as something that somehow will protect people against the government. All these motivations, all these excuses add up to a culture that permits this kind of activity.
And in fact, there was a recent stat that came out, I think, last week, right after the Las Vegas shootings. In the last 275 days, there were 273 shootings. Obviously, not all of them were mass shootings, but still a startling number. I mean, we've seen what other countries have done, including Australia, really taking a tough stand. Do you think, in your opinion, in the next 5 years, perhaps the next decade, the U.S. will perhaps change its policy when it comes to gun control, or not anytime soon?
Very reluctantly, I say not anytime soon. It's conceivable that things could change, but having been through this drill so many times of so many massacres, each time there's something of an outcry, there's a bit of a noise about, well, now we may do something, but we see that nothing is really done. If I could just briefly correct or add a bit of information to the statistic you just quoted, about shootings on a daily basis. Those were mass shootings on a daily basis in which 4 or more people were killed or injured by guns. If you count the number of people who were actually killed on a daily basis by guns, either by their own hand, that is suicide, or by others, it adds up to something like 20 or 30,000 a year in the U.S.
Which is quite appalling. And lastly, as we sort of wrap up this discussion, YouTube perhaps taking a stand, but I mean, if someone isn't going to perhaps use guns, there could be other weapons that they could perhaps go to YouTube and learn. High level, let's talk about not just YouTube, but other sites. How tough or how strict should the internet perhaps be in terms of sort of policing these type of situations so that people don't get carried away and use the internet to learn about mass shootings or perhaps building bombs or hijacking planes, whatever that is? I mean, is that really possible in this day and age?
That's another good question. I believe that YouTube actually bans videos on how to build bombs, although I have to confess I'm not certain about that. I'd say banning such instructions on how to build or use such deadly weaponry can only help, but it only will address part of the much more massive problem we have in the U.S. of the availability and the use of such high-powered weaponry.
All right, Stephen Golan getting us perspective there. Thank you for all those insights and thoughts. The big question again, to have guns or not, we'll not know when that question is going to be answered. Stephen, thanks for joining us tonight. All right, moving on now to our second discussion topic for the evening. Well, Japan has launched a new GPS satellite. What exactly is it and what will it do? Here's the story.
10, 9, 8.
Japan's fourth GPS satellite is expected to increase the precision of GPS information used in a plethora of communication devices, including smartphones and car navigation systems. The satellite will complement the US GPS network, which has an error margin of about 10 meters, and it is now believed that together with the Japanese system, the positioning error will be reduced to only several centimeters. The new satellite will not only make communication systems better and faster, but it will also enable the country to handle natural disasters more efficiently. Japan is expected to launch more satellites later to enhance the system, but a basic 4-satellite GPS system is likely to be operational in 2018. Bureau Report, WION.
Very good perspective on this story. We're now joined by Arup Das Gupta, a former Deputy Director for the Space Application Center for ISRO from Bengaluru. Great to have you on the program. My first question to you, sir, when it comes to this new satellite that Japan has now launched, what does this mean? Is this perhaps going to improve things that other countries did not have in the past?
No, it's a regional global positioning system. And, like we have IRNSS, similarly, Japan has come out with its own system, which I think called Mitsubishi or something like that. And it's going to work for the Japanese. It will be a regional system for the Japanese.
It's perhaps a step in the right direction for them, known for a lot of their improvements and advancement in technology. I understand that this new satellite will be able to detect some of the precision to centimeters, not even meters, like its U.S. counterparts, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Where do you see, this sort of benefiting ultimately the end user? How will they benefit from this?
You see, where you need a lot of precision in your positioning, for example, if you're going hiking or if you're driving a car or even if you're on an aircraft, then your position location needs to be of the order of a meter or better. Also, if you're working with construction machinery and you're trying to precisely locate the machinery so that it can do the work, the earth-moving work accurately, then you need accuracies in terms of centimeters. So this is definitely a very, very useful system that they have developed.
We were also reading up some reports saying that this will certainly, the new GPS system will certainly spur economic growth and help businesses. Which industries, in your opinion, do you think are set to benefit from this new rollout by Japan?
Well, one is the position location industry, navigation industry, and construction.
So these are people with smartphones, these are people in the planning and development sector. Follow-up question as we wrap this up. India, what could they learn? Do we anticipate India doing something like this or perhaps learning from the Japanese?
We have already done it. Our IRNSS does exactly the same things. And also we have Golan, which uses a GPS and exactly does the same things.
Can you compare them perhaps in terms of which one do you think is better than the other? Are they comparable at all?
Well, they are comparable, and I think they're almost equally good. These are regional systems, right? So the Japanese system cannot be used in India, right, and the Indian system cannot be used in Japan.
Absolutely.
So What we have done in India is exactly what the Japanese are doing, except that we have a geographical advantage because we are closer to the equator. The Japanese are much farther away from the equator, and therefore they have to go through a fairly complicated satellite system, which we don't have to.
Are you surprised, really quickly, as we sort of close out this discussion, that the United States perhaps hasn't made as much progress in terms of precision compared to what Japan has, or is that not as puzzling? Is that perhaps not a priority for them, given the communication, the vast amount of communication that Americans typically use?
Not at all. The Americans have done as much. They have a system called WAS. Wide Area Augmentation System, which does precisely what the Japanese are trying to do with theirs and what IRNSS is trying to do for India.
All right. Very interesting discussion there. Das Gupta getting us perspective on the new satellite. Thank you so much for those inputs from Bengaluru.
Thank you very much.
All right. Well, moving on now to social media giant Twitter is now testing out a new feature where you can bookmark your tweets. Now, this move comes after users requested to privately save their tweets. Right now, people can only bookmark the tweets by liking the heart icon, which is sort of the favorite, which it replaced. You can also direct message any tweets you're interested in or retweet it. All right, well, Twitter says this will help users keep a separate list of items that they want to refer back instead of the favorite button icon. Of course, that is the one that is like Facebook's thumbs up like button. Twitter is also testing out other features as well. Of course, they're asking people to submit their inputs on this bookmark feature by using the hashtag #SaveForLater. Twitter is still testing out the new feature and announced last month, in fact, that it is also planning to double the character limit from 140 characters to 280 characters to tweet to give people a little bit more wiggle room. That's about 50 more words to get out their thoughts on Twitter. Now, Twitter was founded back in 2006, but the company unfortunately hasn't done as well as perhaps some other social media giants, struggling financially, even though Twitter is used extensively by celebrities, including U.S. President Donald Trump. In fact, for Q2, Twitter reported a loss of $116 million and a zero growth in users at 328 million people. Meanwhile, on the other hand, Facebook has about 2 billion users. Well, collecting broken shards to rebuild a life is one way of dealing with a natural disaster. But the citizens of Mexico are now learning to sing in the name of tragedy. Here's what they're doing.
The earthquake in Mexico saw people pull together in an immense self-help effort. Local music artists got together to raise money for relief. They were joined by artists from other parts of the region on video, including Shakira, Enrique Iglesias, Roger Waters and Coldplay. A concert was organized in the main Zocalo Square of the heart of Mexico City.
Sí creo que el sentimiento es todavía aún así de tristeza cuando ves toda esa gente que está afuera pidiendo ayuda, porque sabes que ella no puede hacer su vida de un día para otro porque no tiene las mismas condiciones que tú. Sientes todavía la tristeza y pues hay que seguir ayudando.
With more than 200,000 in attendance, spirits ran high as people came together to overcome their grief. The mega concert also reunited Latin music stars Juanes, Mickey Bose and Blue Angel. It's not clear how much money was raised, but the musical effort would have done much to revive the spirits of the victims of the quake. Entertainment Bureau, WION.
Well, one of the most sought-after names in Hollywood, Harvey Weinstein, the man who ruled the American film industry for more than 3 decades, a dominant figure at the annual Oscars, until allegations of sexual misconduct exposed the hidden side of the film mogul. Following these allegations, he was ousted by his production house that he co-founded and also bears his family name. Hollywood that celebrated him just years ago are now expressing their anguish. Here's a report.
It took just 3 days for Hollywood film honcho Harvey Weinstein to witness the downfall of his career that spanned across 3 decades. As soon as reports started surfacing of Weinstein reaching at least 8 settlements with women who had claimed sexual harassment, Hollywood celebrities took to public forums to denounce the American producer publicly. It started with Oscar-winning actress Meryl Streep, who worked with Weinstein in the 2013 comedy film August, Osage County, and 2011's historic drama The Iron Lady, for which she lifted an Academy Award. Through her statement, Streep showcased her dismay over Weinstein's behavior, calling it disgraceful and inexcusable. Following Streep's footsteps, Hollywood stalwarts like Glenn Close, Kate Winslet and more released similar statements slamming Harvey of his disgraceful behavior. Surprisingly enough, Emmy-winning actor Judi Dench, who credits Weinstein for kick-starting her career with Shakespeare in Love, also expressed her concern on the issue. Actor Tessa Thompson followed suit and asked men to join the debate.
One thing that really struck me is I read some piece that was saying, and even a couple actresses that had tweeted, like, you know, that other actresses, that their silence was deafening, and that there was this desire for people to come forward and speak about their experiences, which I think is useful. But I thought, what about men? What about men in the conversation?
And men did join. Prominent names from the industry weighed in to condemn Harvey's act and showed support to the victims of sexual harassment.
His behavior was, terrible. And, I wish him, just as being a fellow human being, we're all struggling with, different demons that he's, can struggle with his and come out the other side.
It doesn't seem like people are that afraid. There's a lot of coverage going on, and there have been a lot of people who have been really brave to come forward and admit some really hard things, and I think all of those things need to be seen all the way through.
And I've had people, since it came out, that I know, come and tell me these stories that I'd never heard before. It's so freaking wrong. It's wrong whether you're the president or you're Harvey Weinstein. It's wrong.
Hollywood A-listers like Julianne Moore, Jessica Chastain, Emmy Rossum, Michael Keaton were among many who vilified Weinstein on social media and supported the victims for their bravery. It seems Hollywood has taken sides this time around, but will this be the end of Weinstein's legacy? Let time decide. Entertainment Bureau, WION.